Hi everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit today about ETs. I was watching a Cretin Today Creation Today with Paul Taylor and Eric Hovind, and they were discussing the SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And they were talking about how the scientists are looking for coded messages that would obviously come from an intelligent source. And they were saying, talking about how at one point they thought they received a coded signal, but it turned out to be the radio pulses from a pulsar, and how they had to change the parameters and make sure they were looking for the correct type of signal, and how this all relates to DNA as coded information that could only have come from an intelligent source. What I find fascinating about that is they distill it all down to being as part of some grand face-off between creation and evolution. And how they put it is that if I were an evolutionist, I guess that would be the natural thing for me to do, to look for life on other planets. Now, setting all of that aside for a sec, I just wanted to sort of point out this disingenuous use of language. They like to use these nebulous terms like evolutionist. You'll notice they don't talk about evolutionary scientists in particular, specifically, because of course then they'd be forced to deal with the data. And they can't do that because they're ignorant of the data. So they talk about things like evolutionists. And this is a term that they like to use. It's a sort of a nebulous term. They can apply it generally to anybody they want, but to no one in particular, so you can't really ever pin them down on it. And it's one of these terms it's sort of akin to evolutionism. It's one of those kind of words. It's just disingenuous. It plays well to the base who don't understand logic, who don't pay attention to terms and definitions and don't think like that. But it's very disingenuous to use. It's highly misleading. But aside from that, this whole concept of DNA as coded information illustrates a point, I think, for me that's very important to make. When I listen to people talk about DNA as coded information, and I'm not talking about Paul Taylor, but I'm talking about people who make a little bit better of a case than that. I've watched a few videos on it recently, and I have to say some of them make a compelling case. But it's only a compelling case because I'm not that well versed on the subject matter. I don't know that much about DNA and how it functions. I'll leave that to the people who are educated on the subject. I've got other fish to fry. But the difference between myself and Paul Taylor or the average Christian apologist or even the average Christian sitting in the pew is that I'm a skeptic. So when I hear an argument like that, I say to myself, well, that sounds compelling. That's a compelling argument. But the other side of me is saying, I'll bet there's a counter-argument. I'll bet if I did some research, I'd find evidence to the contrary. And that's an important distinction. And I think that's why those kind of compelling arguments are dangerous to the low-hanging fruit, to the people who are already presuppositionalists. And I guess that's why we're out here, right? Hoping that we'll catch the odd person who really cares that their beliefs match reality. And to that end, I think going along one of these Creation Today, Creation Bites by Paul Taylor, I was watching where he's talking about SETI and DNA and all this stuff. And he starts off by saying, what could we use evidence for?
How should we use evidence? Evidence can actually be used for a number of reasons, even though we don't use it to prove our case. After all, if we found a piece of evidence that proved the Bible to be true, then that evidence would have greater authority than the Bible.
So there you have it. We can't have evidence trumping Scripture, can we? And I think this is amazing because this is one of the most open admissions I've heard of self-delusion. And I suppose the whole presuppositional apologetic is exactly that as well. You're admitting that at the very least, you're prepared to be delusional. You're prepared to delude yourself. But what Paul Taylor is saying here is that evidence cannot be an authority over Scripture. So evidence cannot trump Scripture, which what you're really saying then is reality cannot trump Scripture. This is the very definition of delusion, right? Believing things contrary to the evidence. Believing things in spite of evidence that they are untrue. And what this makes me wonder about, I think would be fantastic to find out, is what would happen if alien life were to actually descend on this planet? Or if we were to discover alien life on another planet in another galaxy? Because, of course, Paul Taylor has gone on record as saying there cannot be life on any other planet. That's not scriptural. Scripture says this planet was made for life, and this is where it's put. Adam sinned here, so this is where it's at. There's no life anywhere else. What would happen if we discovered alien life? What would their cognitive dissonance manufacture as an explanation for that? I think that would be amazing to see. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.